global crickets. We've seen it around the world. The entire world is just not responding correctly. In the face of predictable and provable operations against them, the people will not respond. It's pretty fascinating to watch. A lot of these things in the world we hear, most of you should have heard about, unless you're totally just tuning in behind the Woodshed, you should have heard about the Paris shooting. And I really wasn't thinking too much more about it than here it goes again. And then I started to think, okay, well, we do have a problem because this is a global thing coming down. We maybe not disregard these things. Maybe let's look at this a little bit more. And I don't know if I have any more insight because I think the United States of America is different enough, and it's actually I think we're actually accelerated ahead of where the rest of the world is at some level with the servitude of its people. That I've said before, this is coming different in the United States, that I'm also wondering, though, how to look at these attacks on people, the people and the nations of the peoples of the world by their governments. Or their governments, which I think is more the point here, their governments being played to get them to capitulate is a pretty interesting dynamic to identify that I want to know for myself. How is it being done to people? Maybe, just maybe, against all the odds, we just might get it in the end. No, and I don't mean it that way. I mean, we might get it right before it's too late. That we can't fall for this nonsense that we're hearing. And again, I don't even know why I have to say this, but I'll say it anyway. And this is in no disrespect to anybody who actually dies in the world over these manipulations by literal psychopaths. Concentrate. Evil elite. It's not evil. Oh, wait a minute. That's not right, huh? They're not elite, are they? See? So this is a evil light because there's something behind this that's still not yet poking its head out, that needs to get it lopped off we got to be ready to lop the head off of the true evil that approaches the world. And that's going to be a whole different style battle, but I think once we see this, and I hope behind the Woodshed I'm giving you tools to be able to look through this nonsense. We were told we can be deceived, and when I found that out myself, I could be deceived. I said, yeah, we can be deceived. That means lots of people who don't know that are going to be deceived, and they're going to be good people that are going to be hurt because they were deceived. What I didn't count on was that the crickets, the mass crickets in regard, you just think that when you're being attacked, and that can be shown that would be enough, but that's not the way this whole thing works. And so, as I found out doing the mining law 10 years ago, or 11 years, I don't know what it's been now, I guess 10, 11 years, thinking, well, we'll just, the grants, the mining grant for this mining law for the mining properties is a grant, it says it right there. The government's not recognizing it, the miners don't even understand it. It should just take about a year. We should have that all straightened up, and we'll get back to normal, right? We'll get back to normal. Reasonable people will come to reason pretty quickly. It's black and white. What's the point? I mean, there's no argument, right? It's been almost 11 years now, and we still have this problem. And then, as I told you, over time, behind the Woodshed, the microcosm of the miner is the microcosm of all the peoples of the world. What we call the community, if I can use that term without too much derogation to them. The miner is a small group of people, like any group of people that has certain things going on within that group of people. That is indicative and how it responds is indicative to the rest of the world. And so I've been able to kind of marvel at that sadly, I marvel at that consistency, that people will respond. They will make every excuse to do other than respond correctly. And when I found out they'll do it even when they're told better, that was probably the bigger surprise. And that's why, and then I told you I've learned there's reasons why people can't respond. There's decisions they have to make in their lives that early on, this is 3 decades ago. For the first 6 to 8 months, I was all like, I could see the problem. This is how we take them out. This is how we stop this nonsense. All started around a traffic ticket. And one of these stops where the cops, there was the beginning. It was literally, I survived it, as I explained before. I survived the encounter of 5 cops drawing their guns on a fabricated stop, where 6 months later, the guy who they stopped, they actually went to their help a little farther up the road, died at their hands. 23 bullets in his back through his pickup. And so that was the time when we could see the change, that at that time I could see, hey, we know how to stop this. This is not where America was supposed to go, and these people are taking advantage. And I was, for a little while, I think about 8 months, rah, we got to stop them. Everyone's got to pull together and stop them. And then I started to look, and it's not so easy. And that said, that's not an excuse either. So I became non-judgmental on someone's abilities to fight the good fight. And so I've told you all, just do what you can, as you can. Don't make any excuses. It has to be legitimate, but you do have to step up, because if you don't, it's come on you. These things will happen to you. These things happen to good people. We have to be a whole lot more prepared. So are we going to be prepared? Well, I don't know. Prepared for what, right? This is the surprise attack that we see this happening in Paris. And some facts came out, and I'm not sure how I want to do this, because we talked about Charlie Hebdo, and this is what got me even started to focus on it. We're watching in a very confined space this method that we're going to have to identify wherever we go. And we can't lump everything into this method. We really have to analyze it as it's happening. But we can set out a parameter. Okay, if this has just happened, and if we can put the points together and it comes out at the end, you can pretty well know you've got the method. You're looking at the method, and that method has to be called out and stopped. And this is what happened with Paris. No different than Charlie Hebdo. I called out. When I could, I have to wait till the broadcast time. I called out, I said, this is the scenario that's going to happen. It looks like Israel's doing something here again, because they got pissed off at the French government, and so this is what's going to happen, and they want to lock down the French people. And how it took them, a month? And all of a sudden, what happened to the Americans in 9/11? They got all their rights just taken away, and within 10 years, they were made enemy combatants of the government without due process. And that change was not much of a change from before, where you were already enemy combatants since 1917. Well, actually, 1933. Remember, that was when the restriction was lifted for the exception for the imposition of the 1917 Trading with the Enemies Act to be applied to the citizens of the United States, so-called. They removed that restriction. They made all of you all combatants then. But then in 2012, whatever, NDAA, they took away your due process and went extrajudicial. They literally told you there's no Constitution. And crickets. And I went to crickets. I haven't opened my broadcast like that before, and I haven't changed. I don't see a reason to change, and until I decide to maybe even change the broadcast or people start waking up, that's what's going to happen. I notice I get another 15, maybe 40 more seconds of talking too, I notice, because the crickets only lasts about 10, 15 seconds. Just to remind us every week, we have something to do. That this methodology that came down in Paris was quickly able to set out. And so I was wondering, well, okay, what's going on? It's not just that the government of Paris wants to lock down the people of France. There's something else. And this was kind of an interesting view for me, so I kept paying attention to it, just to see the facts that would play out in my mind. I said, well, to me, this was not an attack. They're going to get this out of the people, but this was not an attack on the people this time to get them, although they will be used for such. That was a side benefit. This was an attack on the French government for doing some things against the Syrian position, against the United States, ISUS position, that they're going to get the French government to capitulate. This was an external foreign attack on the French government. The French government will use to get more martial law. You heard it break out very quick, and then they rescinded it. But you see, they'll do it. They'll do it immediately. That my whole view when I first saw this is that they want France to capitulate on its position with Russia in Syria. And within 24 hours, the ISUS got their aircraft carrier. And no one's going to say anything about this. So to me, that fulfilled the thing. But I wanted to look at this a little bit closer to be able to prove out that the French government may have been taught a lesson here, and was attacked by something more than some guy who supposedly lost his passport, a bomber from Syria. That's another punchline that comes. And I predicted that as well yesterday. I was going through my mind, talking to a friend and saying, this has got to be laying out this way. that it came out immediately, as the internet is able to do now. CIA Director Brennan met with French security chief before Paris attacks. And I thought this was interesting just to see. This happened like last week, that these people are grouping together, and who was involved with this meeting, but also the Israeli National Security Advisor. MI6, UK, the French Directorate of Security was involved. So they were all meeting before. Now, am I saying that, when I just said what I said, that the French were paid a lesson here, or paying for their actions to jump up with Germany to support Russia in what it's doing? Would that meeting mean that the French security is involved? Well, not necessarily. That would be the perfect way to have a meeting, and thinking that you're on one so-called one page, and the next week this thing come down. Notwithstanding, again, it's been found out that there were supposed drills as well happening. It's all got the same earmarks. But I felt this was a little different to analyze. This is just not getting a bunch of people in a nation to kind of capitulate to certain policies and more constraints. This is a bigger game. This is a much bigger global game. So we see evidence that there was some meetings happening. I was just pointing a thread here. The Israelis were involved. They want to focus on terrorism. You know, there's this. I think G20 was going to meet about this. This is all part of it. The terrorism they're talking about is your terrorism against the global agenda, essentially, into the future. So be careful on when they talk about these things. Remember, terrorism is a fabricated condition. It's also not a state. It's a state only to the extent of a condition. It's not a state of a political state. So you see these words, these interactions with words are pretty fluid on how they use them in order to be able to transition between one discussion and another and move our minds over into where they want us to do. If you have no brain to stop it, they will guide you in, and you see people just rolling out on the emotional side. I mean, when you're in a war, you got to take care of your dead, but you don't take care of your dead before you've stopped the battle by winning it. That the clues were here, that this thing was a. I can't now say that I don't know who done it, because I'm just behind the woodshed. What do I know? But the markers are all over this, that this was an external attack on France. They'll tell you it was is, and remember who is, right? Remember is us. Don't ever forget that, and I'm amazed at how many people that are in media, wherever it's at, will in one breath talk about attacking is and say that they can be attacked, and then in the other hand say the is can do anything, and completely divorce the fact that Zio West and all their allies is what made is us. The U.S. is us. That you have to. I've noticed that so many people are just dropping that from the conversation to keep bringing up like is something more than a caricature of and a tool for imposition. I'm really just astonished at this. On the one hand, people will just deny is this thing that the United States and Zio West has created a tool for whatever all the ends might be, and in the next breath they'll give is a voice and deny its connection. Fascinating. And the listener does the same thing. It was an interesting little story here. So in the Israeli connection, Jewish owners recently sold the Paris's Bataclan Theater, where is. Now it's not is, it's just IS. I guess if they said is, you know, it was like the Israeli Secret Service, right? Is an Israeli intelligence service. So now that just is, in the context of identifying a Jewish owner, where this theater where there was dozens killed. Who knew, folks? Why would they attack that? Well, you see the story. The publication quoted a member, this is a French magazine, the publication quoted a member of the extremist group Army of Islam, who told French security services in 2011 that, quote, we had planned an attack against the Bataclan because its owners were Jews. No, let's invoke Charlie Hebdo. And this is what started to get me thinking this was bigger, because almost immediately as the tweets went through, I'm behind a Woodshed on the Twitter, behind a Woodshed. Immediately the tweets, I didn't quite get this in the beginning. It says, I am Charlie Hebdo. I am Hebdo. Then it went, I am Paris. And I didn't pick up the connection to Hebdo. So all of a sudden this tweet started going through, I am Paris, I am Paris. And then I realized later on that evening they were going, I am, and this is in the context of the world, I am a human. I am human. And I said, wow, that's really jumping into the next sphere. This whole I am Hebdo thing was a psyop, it's a technique as well. They're getting a global mindset going. And they're doing it through social media. Now you notice here they said that the Army of Islam was contacted. Not is. We don't know who these people are. But they bring up lots of names. This is no different than the nesting corporations. You can't tell who's got whom, who controls what. Just a bunch of names. All of a sudden they take on a character, they're real. And we forget these are just names that could be used by anybody to do anything. And in particular, we're concerned about us being persuaded away from reality, essentially. So someone back in 2011 said, we're going to attack this theater anyway. Pascal Lalou, if I get the French right, which I don't know how to put these letters together, but Lalou. What is a lou in British language? Lou. One of the theater's former owners said Saturday that the theater was sold. This is the Jewish gentleman. So he sold the theater in September after 40 years. So if Jewish connection, that the connection is broken in September. And yet, when this thing came down, he said he took a call from the theater at the time of the attack. Consider this, folks. This guy's not even owning this theater, he says. And yet, someone calls him during the attack. And he says, I could hear the gunfire. I guess it could happen. But who was the brave soul to stand up in front of the gunfire where we're told a whole bunch of people were dying and make a phone call to the prior owner that this guy has even an opinion to be printed in the media? He also said a member of Eagles of Death Metal was hit by a bullet and killed. There was no confirmation of this. What happened, I think, was as a band member, the roadie might have died. I don't quite know about that for sure either, but not a member of the band. But although it doesn't matter, this is guys talking from a phone call, a long way away, telling us he's the news, he's the only witness. And he talks there was no confirmation of this. Well, why is he even talking about it? Why are they printing it? This is part of the meme. There is blood everywhere, he said. This is him getting a phone call at the time it's happening. There's blood everywhere. And he said, it will take 3 days just to clean that up. Why is that more important than anything else, that it's going to take 3 days to clean up the mess? Why is the bottom line to the business more important than having your customers shot at? And carnage is now the word comes out everywhere. Don't care about the carnage in Palestine. Don't care about the carnage in Syria. But this is carnage here now. The duality of the importance on whoever's pushing the story. Why would someone say in the heat of the moment it will take 3 days to clean the mess up? Why is the guy who sold the business even interested in that? That the guy calling him is telling him that's interesting to him. Like, you ain't going to get your money now this month because we're not going to be able to put the shows on because we got blood to clean up. That's more important at the time to say and to put in print for us to read. Pascal said Parisians, and this is where I think the whole point was, the Parisians no longer feel safe, quote, after what happened here. Remember, Pascal is a guy who's a former owner, a Jewish owner apparently, who's talking about this. And he's making the comment that Parisians no longer feel safe. Have you asked the Parisians? Who are these people that make a representation that they know everything about everybody, and they speak for everybody? It may be the case. But again, what they're trying to do is they're trying to set the meme, move the observations from where they are into where they want them to go. The terrorists have no ruse, Pascal said. We have to take the bull by the horns in the battle against terror, and France and the government never do. Oh, so the Israeli guy, he's saying that the government, I dare you to bring and do something here. So what interesting, he's being goaded by the very people I think actually helped to do this. It was pulled off way too smooth. A bunch of people running across the border, as we get the next story, wouldn't be this organized. If I'm to believe any journalism, over even the witnesses we're back to the same problem. We got these crisis actor conditions. People who are telling us their witness, and you listen very carefully, and there is no witness of anything that went on. Maybe loud noises, if at most. People right next to this thing, just loud noises, didn't see anything else. One journalism interview that I had that was from a guy who lives there but is a writer. I don't remember his name now. It had some, for my reference, it would be a Mexican name, but he sounds like a Spanish name, but it's actually a Mexican sounding name. That he lives in France. He's a journalist that actually works for Asian Online or something. And he was talking to a friend of his that was there, happened to be a Dutch guy, in one of the cafes, he says. And the report was that the guy that shot up the cafe was professional, very professional, in all his mannerisms, how he even shot his gun and who he shot and how quickly he shot. And then he disappeared. That gives us a clue that if there was any evidence of any actual shooting, that's where we get a little bit there. And if we can believe this displaced journalist someplace being contacted by another journalist who's really not connected at all, and we can understand the truth, there's a truth there, that this was a lot more professional, if we can say it that way, and methodical, than would be a happenstance guy coming out of Syria with a bunch of buddies. Very trained and very planned. That it's reported that the shooter got away, where the French were saying nobody got away. That we get in the aftermath, we get Paris terrorist attack, Syrian passport found near corpse of attacker. As read in the worldtruth.org website, social network, I want a bunch of these passports for a bomb shelter. These things are indestructible. 9/11, we had a passport from somebody inside the planes. These passports show up everywhere. How many in the MH17 or whole handfuls of passports, perfect. These passports are really indestructible. I want in fact, I want them for a body vest now. Since we're going to be attacked by cops. Almost to planned script, and laughably so. Paris terror attack. Syrian passport found near corpse of attacker. This happened to be one of the bombing of he was wearing a bomb vest, a suicide bomber, which makes it even more difficult. But here's the meme. Here's how it starts to work. How they start to make it work. A Syrian passport was found near the body. Investigation of the deadly attacks in Paris said. The attacks described by France's president as an act of war were designed to show the country, did you miss it? Were designed to show the country would remain in danger as long as it continued its current policies, Islamic State said in a statement. The attacks described by France's president as an act of war. Understand the problem there. They're declaring an act of war on a non-state. It's an impossibility. But the same 9/11 meme. This is the 9/11 apparently for France. And it was designed to show the country would reign in danger as long as it continued its current policies, Islamic State said in a statement. Who is Islamic State? ISUS, United States, Israel, Britain, maybe even France, although I think they were cut out of this deal to have them pay a lesson here for their current policies. They don't tell us what current policies are. The current policy I started to see was where France and Germany got together to agree that Russia was proper to go into Syria and protect Assad. See, if you believe that Islamic State is these foreigners that are actually legitimate in a religious jihad against all of the Middle East, you've just done what the moderators are telling you to believe. You might as well say, every time you see Islamic State, just say United States and Israel paid mercenaries. Is us. So when you read that, you say the attacks described by France's president as an act of war were designed to show the country would remain in danger as long as it continued its current policies, United States and Israel paid mercenaries said in the statement. Quote, to teach France and all the nations following its path that they will remain at the top of Islamic State's list of targets, and that the smell of death won't leave their noses as long as they partake in their crusader campaign, the group said. Well, if that's the United States telling France, as long as you keep up with your path of supporting Putin and in turn not attacking Assad, you will be attacked some more. And you're going to be attacked in ways you can't do it because we have our elite all over this. And we have evidence of that. As the news starts to come out, we start seeing evidence of this very well planned attack. That I think France was cut out and they were attacked, if I can say it, by Israel and the United States. I don't know who did it. I'm just saying it's a level way above of some guy coming across the border where they announce in this story that they're talking about a passport near a body, and then you don't hear about that passport in the story no more. But they're in the words they're telling France, the government of France, you keep up your path and you're going to be attacked mercilessly. And it's funny that word comes out later, out of the mouth of Holland, whatever I can pronounce his name. Faced with war, the country must take action, Holland said, without saying what that meant. So there it is. They're talking in advertisement. Edward Bernays speak. It's butter's better. Better than what? They give that to you to do. The attacks at the stadium, concert hall, and cafes and restaurants in northern and eastern Paris were, quote, an act of war committed by Daesh that was prepared, organized, and planned from outside of France, with the help from inside France, Holland said, using the Arabic acronym for Islamic State. Well, Daesh is just it's part and parcel. But now I realize when I read that story what they've just done. France is going to attack Daesh and make you believe it's not ISIS. Giving themselves a foothold, the greater security here was all of the Western, Zio-West and Europe nations got together to try and continue to go after Assad. They attacked Russia because the outcome of this, they needed that aircraft carrier in the region. And they got it. The people gave it to them because the crickets are in France as well. The message to the government of France is discontinue your path, allowing and agreeing that Russia is okay in Syria to protect Assad. And then they say they're going to attack Daesh. Why? Because they can't attack all of so-called ISIS. Notwithstanding it's the United States, you know that's just a puppet. There's real Muslim people fighting this over there. They're the fodder. But now that France they didn't say ISIS here. They focused on Daesh bags. Those Daesh bags are really ISIS. But now the French government gets to focus, and their attack can be focused and not include the entirety of ISIS. That they can move over to Iraq as well. While the United States tried to gain its balance over Russia actually doing the job that it was claiming it was doing for a year, that Russia did in a month. That severed the whole plan. They can't have a continued war of attrition. We call it proxy now. From the United States standpoint, it is proxy. From Russia's standpoint, it's not. For instance, this story was very important to see that they then focused from ISIS completely down to Daesh. So it was telling to me of the place that France is playing as the United States' iOS attempts to gain some measure of influence again in that region. It's going to be very, very interesting to see, and I thought yesterday, again, all this was yesterday, I'm thinking about this as I'm looking through some of this, that the toy that just got thrown into the bathtub was this aircraft carrier. They needed more air power. France wasn't going to give it to them. They got them to give it to them, and they got the people to agree. My immediate question was, this aircraft's the punchline to the joke. But what is Russia is going to do if, like Israel was lied, sent the meme out that it went to attack, jets went into Damascus and attacked. What is the lie there? It was a lie, first of all, but what is now, where there's not going to be the lie, where the French are going to claim a right in this war now that they're now declaring it's been made against them by a non-state, to go into a third-party nation to attack that nation. What will Russia and Assad do if that, from that aircraft carrier or something around the dynamics of that aircraft carrier, an attack goes to Assad? And I'll get to it, another punchline. Just breaking right as we went on. I think Grimner actually tweeted it. This is all my thoughts here yesterday and partially the day before. That we're getting the answers today on this method. And I'm saying this method's not just to get the people of France to be beat down some more, which they need, and they're going to do in this global martial law, and getting everybody, this is a mental thing. They're going to get people to agree this is okay. Because this G20 terrorism thing and this peace treaty coming down for global climate change, global sustainable governance, needs the people's capitulation. They need to beat it down. They'll blend all this stuff together eventually. So this is the bigger end game I'm seeing. So it's not just the punchline was this aircraft carrier. It's not the end of it. It's just what they did and who they did it to get it. And what does it mean in the bigger picture that I'm looking to see? How are they translating that over to get the United States of America? This didn't happen. This happened in a gun-free zone is the point. That's why this is probably not going to happen in America unless it's only in places like universities and malls and things like that, where for the most part people are pretty laid back. The problem for the United States, for the way that this happened there, that professional killer that was shooting up people, if I can take this is as a true report, that professionally methodically killed people in a cafe. That guy had absolute knowledge. The report is he wasn't even wearing body protection. He knew no one was going to hurt him. That in the United States of America, that's not so certain. In fact, when they go to the United States of America, they're going to have to wear a lot more to make them not look like Daesh, but they're going to have to look more like military. Because they're going to have to protect against the lone gunman, the concealed carry guy, who just might step up and do something. They would then have to have more people to pull this off, to watch everybody's back against that threat. And so that's why I've always felt that in part that this is going to be different, how they go after America. But these techniques are being used, and people are gullible enough to let it happen, that I think this is a serious threat against all people, and in particular America, where we got our head in sand, thinking that this can't happen here, and we got to protect it, and our guns will stand up at the right time. But then they don't come at you that way. And we've missed that point. That I decided to look at this a little bit more. We're seeing the government itself change the terms confined. You watch these people adjust to another plan. France immediately capitulated here, coughed up the aircraft carrier, and going after the people some more, going to lock down the countryside, and going to put it all and twist it into the fact that they're in a war now, a war against a non-state. A war that will have no place once Russia actually gets rid of ISUS. You see the government twisting, they're not going after ISUS, they're going after Daesh. They're making you think it's all different. And remember, don't forget, these are just names These are just another names for United States and Israel paid Isaiah West mercenaries against governments. This is the thing I see people jumping back and forth. First they'll agree that is something, and then they'll tell you that the United States funded it. And they'll disconnect those 2 points. Never saying, well, what we talked about in the first sentence is the United States. If is attacked France, that was the United States, or Israel, or whoever, the SAS out of Britain. Remember, we've heard a ton of SAS intelligence going in right before major actions. I don't know how many times I've reported on that over the years. These are the professional hitmen that use this fiction of a refugee or a group of refugees. They use that as a shield to actually do professional hits. And they did this one against the French government. The French government was blindsided on this one because they wanted to teach the French government they could do it, and they needed something from the French government. The people are the fodder. They're going to lose no matter what happens. Why? Because they're crickets. They don't respond in the correct way. So remember, before we were talking about this passport. This passport next to the body, it's kind of lost, but it becomes a major player, actually, in what they keep pushing because they want to be able to focus to Syria. And in fact, let me get to that passport. There's some more to read, but more important, this passport becomes the focus in one regard. That yesterday I'm thinking, well, and here's where I want everybody's mind to be thinking. Because, we talk about legal things, law things in the court. We think about bringing evidence. And this is really what I wanted to focus on. That when you start putting even the rules of evidence applied to what you're looking at, it helps you look at more objectively at something and allows you to think better about it. That this discussion about this passport was so prominent, it has been, that I wanted to point out that if for those that haven't figured things out yet, and the punchline comes about this as well, that the passport laying next to a body, no different than the passport on the street above 911, and all the passports they say they found out of MH17, all these things aren't actually connected to the body. Under legal terms, there's no chain of evidence to the particular body that they're claiming is the one, first of all. The chain of evidence does not even begin at the location it's found. It has no chain of evidence of location origination. That I want to focus that this passport to try and focus people's attention on Syria, that some group of Syrian refugees, or can be blamed on the refugees to inflame that problem in Europe, something that was also created by the U.S. paid and Israeli paid mercenaries, if not those government special forces themselves. You got to keep these categories of tools against you in mind, because that's what's happening everywhere in the world. These people are setting up scenarios and straw men everywhere. This is one of the main problems I see about the so-called alternative media, and why behind the woodshed we're beyond media. I'm just tired of this media nonsense. It becomes a way to focus your mind on things that really don't exist and get you all involved on things that are really irrelevant. It's really difficult to cut through. That if we don't have these tools, which we haven't really been given, or we didn't think that they were as important as they were when they were given to us, because some of this stuff was, we're destroying ourselves by not understanding how to use these tools in order to cut through the nonsense. That the entertainment of the passport, without looking at it as a chain of title and the lack of it, would diminish and destroy it as a fact and show you initially, not just because the passports, those of us that are looking at this, know the passport's been used in order to focus attention that doesn't exist to get us off the main culprit. That's the obvious one. But we miss the fact of the players that come along that come in and talk about this. Greece stands up to say that that passport was somebody that went through their gates. It's now coming out, as I was saying yesterday to myself, what is the truth about that passport? There's no proof it's legitimate. Greece doesn't have any knowledge about that passport laying on the ground. There's no proof it wasn't platted. There's no proof it's not real. There's no proof it's real. There's no proof it attached to the body. There's nothing, but they use it, they promote it. This is a thing not about passports, folks. This is about authority. This is what they do to identify authority. They're getting you focused on this passport as it's a costume for authority. No different than the cops use the costume of authority, their badge or their uniform, to place your mind into a condition that makes you believe in the thing they're saying is how you have to believe. That they've focused a lot of attention on this passport to bring up the Syria question, to inflame the self-inflicted wound of the migration problem. Stop bombing their homeland. That's a simple answer there. Russia, I understand Russia's been bombing for a month or so. Tons of work going on. The Syrian army starting to advance. I told you that would happen with air cover. They'd be able to advance. It would stalemate over. And apparently there's been almost 1 million people stop fleeing Syria over this, although I haven't been able to actually see it. The reports are that people are stopping to run as they see someone actually taking care of business to stop the nonsense. Stop bombing their homeland. They won't be refugees. Don't use the refugees, as you see A21 says, for the global governance order. That isn't going to stop. That's why it continues. The government that stands up and says, well, Putin's okay, they get slapped pretty hard. They cough up an aircraft carrier. And then Holland says, oh, we're going to lead a war which will be pitiless. Politician talk. He's already capitulated to a position. He's already altered the dialogue. He's already declared war on a non-state. He's following all the methodologies that everybody that has walked into this problem do in order to continue to perpetuate the problem. And I hear crickets about that. The people of the world are really absent, I guess is the best thing I can say. They're just gone. In this case, the French can't even attack their own government except for not being in a position to see the danger. In this case, it appears France was even the target. And the politicians capitulate. And the whole prize here was apparently Zia West decided they needed another aircraft carrier. France's only aircraft carrier to leave the Middle East on Wednesday. Where? Well, to where that little passport says it got to go. The only aircraft carrier in France's naval fleet, the Charles de Gaulle, and the name of Charles de Gaulle is very interesting too. And I am not feeling very good about this. It's what caused me to start. It's what came second after I started thinking, well, what's going to happen when France thinks they can go accidentally attack Assad with Russia sitting there? Charles de Gaulle can be seen to be a pretty clear voice of independence in France's history against what the United States was doing and has been doing, especially monetarily. And so the aircraft carrier is named that. And so this portends a potential. They're going to sink the independent mind and spirit of Charles de Gaulle by sinking this aircraft carrier and escalating things beyond, just beyond. As a potential. I'm not predicting it, don't know. This is being set up in the terms. It was predictable this was going to be an outcome as soon as that thing went down. What wasn't so clear was how professional it was and who done it. And we could say that France was in on it, but I don't think so. We could say that there was drills made, but that could have been a cover for the real operators of this thing. It has been said and reported now that French and German intelligence services knew Paris attack was coming a month ago and did nothing. Well, what are they going to do if it's not there? But there is rumors here, if you will, words stating that people knew this was coming. Now, knowing something's coming, not necessarily the ability to defend against it. And if they knew it, then did they know the real story? Even if they knew something might be, where would they position their people ahead of time? Well, what I found interesting about this little report was that it came from Anonymous. Again, who are the people that are players in the story, on the stage that we're watching being done? Anonymous pops up. Who did we talk about last week? The mask of Anonymous is the representation, branding of Guy Fawkes. He was maybe an incompetent Jesuit soldier. And this branding is the global face of Jesuit control, willingly donned by people who claim to be helping other people. That this information comes out stating that there was going to be some kind of a terrorist attack. And now the vilification that the government of France knew about it and did nothing. I thought the integration of Anonymous with this much more important than the fact that France, I don't think any government can actually respond to a story that they don't know the details to. But for all who when they met with the Zio West operators in the security meeting, that wasn't discussed as a lie, so that France couldn't be knowing what was coming at them. So we have this meme coming out from so-called Anonymous, trying to point the finger at the French like they were standing around flat-footed. And at some level, I don't believe governments generally will stand around flat-footed. They may plan to hurt their people, but they're not standing there just flat-footed, because then they cannot tell their people, keep their people contained if it's proven that they were flat-footed. So there's a legitimate reason why they can't be flat-footed against, maybe the people will become not crickets. And they can't show that either. So we have now an attack by an anonymous group who looks like the brand of the underlying evil light, speaking in this whole thing. Which I found pretty interesting as an integration, how large this operation might actually be. So we have this attack, this integrated attack. We see some professional integration that's much higher than anybody from the passport that could be saying, the passport of which has no legal chain of evidence to get back to where it says it belongs. And then we also know, it should be obvious, maybe the passport isn't even real, that you would do that if you were going to hide your identity to go execute this. And even if you were some so-called moderate paid mercenary of the United States or Israel, you would have a document put on you to misdirect the point anyway. The passport document that they've been focusing on to try and get everyone focused on Syria, I found almost a laughable condition, even though it's predictable under the model, that the operators still used it. And so what do we think? What do we got to look at that? We got to look at why they still used it when they understand people are onto it. They're finding out now, the reports are now, it's a false document. Well, that wasn't predictable, was it? In the war of wars, without any rules, none of these are possibilities, I'm sure, in anybody's mind. No, everything's on the table. All manners of deceptions are on the table. It's coming out this was not even a false document. Then what happens? Greece comes up and says, no, yes it is. Why is Greece playing such a part here? Where are they that they have the chain of title to this document? That when the French say, no, this looked like it was printed out of Turkey, that Greece stands back up and says, no. What gun is to the back of the head of Greece that they keep pushing themselves into a story they had no point in? It doesn't matter. Their report was that somebody with this name and this passport passed through here. That's the end of their play. Why did they come back into the scene? And I think you're seeing the development, a little bit more of all the players in this. Why are they focusing so much on trying to identify this with evidence that nobody could tie anywhere? And yet they are, and I guess here's the point, because people apparently are falling for it, and because this stuff keeps working, they keep doing it. That might be the only answer to we have to know. They keep doing this stuff because everybody keeps falling for it. At the same time that all that happened, and a day later, I think, at least 10 people are killed at a French high-speed train as derails and catches fire near Strasbourg, which I think is on the far eastern side of France. The government quickly comes out and says it was a mechanical problem. And here's what when that story fell apart. It was a mechanical problem. The train was traveling too fast, which on the surface looks like it's okay. But from the information I got, it's almost a brand new track with a brand new train. And it's a high-speed train. But the government is saying this is not terrorist-related. Okay, it could be. The coincidence is highly suspicious. No different than the Russian airplane that got down. No different than the cargo plane that got taken down in Sudan. That I think we're watching the elements of the global war as it's been playing out in kind of slow motion and without obvious nature. That the French come out and say this train had mechanical problems, it was going too fast and all, but we find out that their system, and this is where this kind of settled for me. This is when Holland said that the attack came from outside the border of France. That started to confirm what my suspicion was 2 days ago, that this was an attack by Zio West on France to get it to get back from its path of agreeing to Russia's intervention in Syria and get it back on the path and cough up some hardware. That he said it was from external, utilizing internal people. And then we find out this story breaking again today. And if I can take this guy's this information true, it makes sense to me. I'm just going to tell it to you. We can all just decide on the value of it. But I think it's Paul Craig Roberts' website. I think this also came from Grimner on a Twitter, just as I was breaking into the broadcast. A French security left blind during Paris attack. Now, it says left blind during. You'd think there would have been a report about that, but there wasn't. And he says, I have received a report. Now, I have some questions about this guy, but for this instance, because for any instance where it starts to look like there's information out there that you can pull together to make a better sense of what you saw than what you're being told, I'm going to throw this into the pile of information that I have to identify what tools do they use, and what can we be looking for, so that if it comes to us, we don't blink on it. We don't look at it. We go right to the target. We'll cut right through the nonsense. We get right to where we need to go so that we can protect ourselves. So we don't become the crickets in France. Paul Craig Roberts says, I have received a report from European Security. No, I know European Security. I don't know who these people are, but they got a whole group of people that were meeting together. It was called Security. France was involved in it. Israel was involved in it. America was involved in it. Britain was involved in it. European Security, that was a massive cyber attack on French systems 48 hours prior to and during the Paris attacks. Among other things, the attack took down the French mobile data network and blinded police surveillance. The attack was not a straightforward DOS attack, but a sophisticated attack that targeted a weakness in infrastructure hardware. This was not committed by someone who had a refugee passport over coming in from Syria. There's so much. As I just talked about, there's the cachets that were involved in the refugee camps and all. Like, how'd they get there? All the pictures I saw was women carrying kids and fathers carrying daughters and people running through chain link fence and stuff. There was no buddy carrying cachet weapon, but there they were in France, a place that's not supposed to have so many guns, got full of them, I guess. The cops certainly had the guns. The guys doing the killing certainly had the guns, but everyone else was having no guns, and most of them died. I don't know that anyone actually died unless they were claimed to have been a suicide bomber. And we think that suicide bomber does his own bomb vest. I'm not so sure. They get some guy to put a bomb vest on that's triggered by remote control. They don't know when. He's just used as another roving weapon. We got a little bit of clue about that. Because not to get gross and kind of fascinated over death, because I really don't. This is part of the problem. Don't want to make a spectacle of this. This is really not good stuff. But why was it somebody in a bomb vest could only kill 4 people when the streets were full of people? In one story I saw, the reporter they showed the pieces and the parts. Why would someone in a bomb vest going to go kill a whole lot of people only kill 4 with a street full of people? Unless that was not detonated by him. And they just missed. That we have a report here that this was a super sophisticated attack. Sophisticated in electronics, in digital technology, sophisticated in its execution, professional in its efficiency. That when we hear that the attack came from outside, that didn't happen from inside by some guy who decided as a bomb, he had to have his passport in order to be detonating a bomb vest on him. This is a sophisticated attack. This is a planned attack. This was done at levels beyond normal people in their little jihad. Are you prepared, folks, to find out that your government does this? This was done, a group of governments against another government, I think. Are you prepared to really come to terms with the fact that your government does this to yourself? What are the lessons to learn from Paris? I don't know them all. I'm just seeing more and more and more. I'm turning them to local to us. Will it happen everywhere? No, that's not what we're saying. Understand that. I find that New York popped up in all this. You know, New York has like an agreement with the French. Why didn't they know? With all their intelligence, how come nobody actually knew, folks? Were they in on it too? Were they just cut out of the loop? Can they be moved against by a better, superiorly trained and motivated group of people? Can New York actually fail with all the billions being dumped in to keep you controlled when the people who want to do something, they get it done? The report, as I said before, now I'm coming onto my tabs, I'm going down the tabs, the false flag link. I don't know if this is a false flag necessarily. I think this is an actual attack. They happened to use it to get the capitulation, but this was an attack on France to get them to do something. It's not a false flag. France was blind. France was responding. France ended up doing something that it didn't claim to be able to want to do before. They fell in line with the script that was written since 9/11 on how you do this. The passport found next to the suicide bomber was definitely a forgery. The punchline. There we have it, folks. My concern yesterday was you can't prove this is the fact. It could be anything. This is a stage play. They can set up. This is like a drama murder mystery where the murderer is setting the stage to direct the investigators to go search out somebody else or nobody else. The scene of the crime has been planted. And eventually now, and with the wonder of the internet, we get to hear this. Even if it's not, I've told you that it doesn't matter whether or not there's a different game going on. We can have people that are refugees. We can have people that are known, supposed, the ones that have agreed to go fight under ISUS because they think it's some caliphate that's being started up underneath Islam, which I don't see any evidence of that at all. It's just made up. They're just making it up. They're just ignorant people. They're taking on, making themselves important. I don't know what the story is. They can be literally used to do what they need to be, what someone else needs to be done, and it would look normal that they wanted, that they were the actual planners. And they're not. That you find these little anomalies is what you need to start looking for. It's what I've been trying to do. Part of the empowerment I hope behind the Woodshed is to not make you do anything, but allow you to see deceptions at every turn. We are that easily persuaded against our better judgment. I've seen this over and over and over. Like I've told you before, it's not a worry, it's a concern to be protective of. We can be duped very easily. And we can do it to ourselves, which is probably the more scary thing. That's the easy way to go. This is pretty neat if you take a circumspect look. In fact, this operation was executed, I would have to say, perfectly at this point. They got what they want. Don't know what the next step's going to be with this aircraft carrier, about how the United States and Israel need to use this. Why Israel stated that they attacked Damascus and it was a lie here last week, I don't know. That may have telegraphed the fact that they're going to need to be able to hide more of sorties from the United States and to try and prove that they're doing something, and just every once in a while slip up, maybe attack a little bit of infrastructure to go after Assad. In the meantime, Russia and their group is all working to try and make an agreement that Assad, the government of Syria, goes through elections. So I don't know what the United States has and Israel has on top of this. That they're moving all this, taking all these extraordinary remedies to advance their whatever cause they ultimately want. Even if it's just continued chaos, that seems to be probably the simplest thing that they want. Again, when you're divided, you can't fight. There's no way. That's why the United States, that's how they're taking down the United States. You see it at every turn. Just find something two people disagree with, and that's it. Two people with a disagreement are owned. If that disagreement becomes more important than the principles of living together, even in your difference, you're owned. So they get this aircraft carrier out, 24 hours. People are okay with that. Everyone's screaming against ISUS like it's some Islamic thing, and it really is us. The United States Israel's laughing at this. They're not even there. It's a straw man. That it gets life it's animated when they need it, and it's not there when it gets attacked. Fascinating, and people keep buying into it. Keep disconnected. This dissonance that sits there to admit in one breath that it exists and for real, and in the other one not identifying that it's a puppet. To the people that are actually doing it, that are claiming to be the ones that are solving it. Brilliant plan. Brilliant plan. I'm really concerned about this aircraft carrier. I mean, obviously, I can sense, more armament. But the thing was, watching France when they went to Daesh instead of going to ISUS, they split a hair that's not splittable because it's all ISUS. Remember, but that did in fact do something, because there's people that believe that splitting that hair was a focused attack. In fact, it's just a focused attack on a straw man. Because the United States caused all this. Saw a picture some guy made, and it was a pretty neat picture, but I thought it missed something. It was an Assyrian family stuck between a hand that was put up in front of their face with the European Union flag on it, stopping their progress, and a big buck knife to their back. Being held, it said on the blade said IS, and it was being held by this hairy-looking, big, thick hand. And I wrote back to the guy who drew it, and I said, I asked him as a question, you left off "Made in USA" on the blade that you said was IS. Today I see a Frankenstein monster cartoon where the main body is the United States of America, the arms are Germany and France and what all. When we focus on the fact that the United States is this thing you call IS, there's really nowhere else to go. I think Russia did that. They said, we're not going to make a distinction between IS and moderate rebels and Daesh and all these people. And if there is, tell us who your moderate rebels are. And the United States says we can't do that, because it's all the same thing. The people that are being fought are all United States or Israel paid, or Qatar. We're not talking music. Qatar is Saudi Arabia, more than all that, are paid mercenaries. This is not a state war. This is not people from the inside fighting for their freedom inside the government that's been so oppressive. That France coughs up this aircraft carrier, and I'm just kind of smiling when I hear the point, because I wanted to know, when that aircraft carrier gets across the Mediterranean and parks itself off of Syria and starts running flights, if it attacks Assad in any way, what will Russia do? Is an interesting challenge that the United States is doing to Russia against France. And just as, minutes before getting on the broadcast, Syria warns, it is posted, Syria warns a direct attack against French nuclear carrier. Syria warns of direct attack against French nuclear carrier. Do you hear the tempo raising, folks? This is the pressure that the United States needed to put on Syria, and it's kind of calling bluffs at this point. And I suspect Russia may be able to do it. They have some missiles that are just flat capable. In fact, the more I look at what Russia has done in the last couple decades over their military, it's quite amazing. What does that mean for America? Maybe nothing, until you find out that the saber rattling that's going on over there against China as well, and the news that prompts us for this nuclear war that the neocons apparently want to see. I don't think any sane people would ever discuss this and want to even think about it. Has people talking about nuclear war globally. But the Tomahawks are set off. I think it wasn't Tomahawks. I'm sorry. It was ICBM style missiles coming off the Navy. The Navy just experimented with and to test that their capabilities will bring them into the year 2050. And so what does Russia do? They send off, well, America did theirs one at night, got everybody all riled. If you want to think the United States people are nuts, look at the stories around that missile being fired at night. Look at all the news about the missiles going off at night. Folks, that's such an old thing. Oh, neater than heck to watch, but that's such an old thing that it made any news at all. I had to shake my head. We are a sick people, if that causes much of that stir as it did. So what did the Navy do? It sent up the next one during the day where it didn't make such a splash. I think they might have been embarrassed about how the people responded. That what did Russia do? They sent up two of their own. If you don't think that there's some serious saber rattling going on, when they move this nuclear carrier into Syria, and Syria's saying, don't you put it up, don't put it in our waters. You see, Russia's being silent here at the moment, and smartly so, that Russia is sitting as a helper to the Syrian interests. This is becoming serious. If Syria says take them out, Russia will take them out. And I don't know that there's much that aircraft carrier can do. And if that's where this thing goes, and if Russia believes that that's where this thing needs to go, I don't know that there's going to be a way to persuade that away, and we're going to see some serious things coming down. These strikes target Syrian oil wells, and all this is done without the approval of Damascus government, which for us means the violation of our sovereignty, is what Syria is saying. They're now starting to draw the line with what they couldn't do before, when the United States government and Britain and even some French jets went in, and Australia jets, the Canadian jets, which were just pulled out. They all just invaded that sovereignty. That was without Russia. Russia's there now. It's been said that they have some S-400 missile batteries. I don't know. It looks like they have the radar for the S-400s or the S-300s. I'm not so sure they have S-400s there, but if Russia's already bringing the S-300s in, and this is a big threat, the S-400s come in, I don't know that there's not going to be much left standing as far as military hardware, like it could be when Syria was all by itself fighting the people, the United States and Israel paid mercenaries. That the tempo is raising. And, maybe I don't get into it too much, but maybe people that listen in to people like myself, and I don't know that I'm somewhat so different, but I am different, I think, in large part, where I'm trying to explain conditions that you can respond to, and then I explain how you respond to them. That these things could be considered, conspiracy theories. Well, I just went through a proof of sorts that showed that the end of this Paris attack was actually an attack on the French government itself by outsiders. I think it's Israel, U.S., Britain, or whomever else. I don't know who else is there. We see all the soldiers inside of the evil behind the evil working as well in Anonymous. We see the capitulation of a French government who was supporting Russia and now not supporting Russia, but also get coughed up a very valuable piece of hardware. To then be faced off by Syria at a nuclear level now. This is a predictable thing. It's beyond theory, and yet this week is and I understand these are progressive or liberal websites that bring up this stuff, but a thing comes up that says 10 right-wing conspiracy theories that have slowly invaded American politics. The paranoia is in our bloodstream, and with the emergence of social media, we're more misinformed than ever. And that's exactly what I'm talking to you about. And this is another misinformation, this article itself. And also, they want to put out that paranoia is in our bloodstream. Folks, if you haven't read that, then it probably doesn't. Maybe I just contaminated you a little bit, but let me give you the antidote. This is an injection. Paranoia is in our bloodstream that you take in that you don't understand you take in. Let me tell you right now, paranoia is not in the bloodstream of the aware. I don't mean New Agey. I mean in the aware. I don't mean like taking this stuff into paranoia yourself. I mean looking at objective facts and really working through this stuff, and then finding out the whodunit type things and focusing your attention on that is not a paranoia. These people want to bring up conspiracy theories as a paranoia that's inside your blood. It is a really big disservice, and don't believe it. Because I go through this list, and this happens to be written by the Southern Poverty Law Center. A voice, the media of Evil Light, apparently. It doesn't even justify a whole lot more discussion, except that this is what they're putting out to corrode your mind. That maybe some of these are conspiracy theories, but I know a couple of them are provably not, that they mentioned in here, such as we call so-called Agenda 21. Remember, the American Bar Association must be a conspiracy theorist because it has confirmed, affirmed, and asserted the promotion for Agenda 21, which they tell us in the Bar Association documents that I read to you, that they say that it was not talked about as Agenda 21 in America. It was called Sustainable Development. That this article is disproven just in that one point, to be disinformation and to try and put a poison in your mind that your blood is corrupted to a point of you are not capable. And I'm not going to, in fact, they start up Francis Bacon and suspicion of a 1625 and on and on and on, paranoid style politics. They're talking about this entering into politics. Now remember, politics is how this whole United States government got started. It was the political power. Why? And it come through commerce. And polity and policy and police is all there to be gotten. And this article is a good one to read because it goes through and lists all the things that are actually being done if you understood it's not a theory. That is, I wanted to point out, this comes out at the time also, and they name it right up front, that media is used to corrupt, that you are, and I'm telling you that it does, it is, I'm agreeing to that part, but the story itself is a corruption. That I was going to read a little bit about it, but I don't really want to make a list. If you read this, you should read it. But read it to know that these things are not theories that they're saying, that it's being claimed to be a theory, to put in your mind that it's in your blood to receive and accept and regurgitate things that are theory against your proofs. They go on through quite 10 things. It's quite interesting. It's interesting who they name in here. It's all the players, folks, that you then, when you go find the documents, like I didn't notice under the Agenda 21 one, and I'm not going to, maybe I should go down quickly. Where was that? Yeah, there it was. Number 3, conspiracy of the Greens. See, it's not a conspiracy of the Greens. I call it gangrene. You can call it gangrene. Unless green means economy, then it is partly, isn't it? So they kind of give you a truth here, conspiracy of the Greens, A20, and then they go off on this very first part, they talk about A21 being non-binding. Essentially toothless United Nations Natural Resources Sustainability Plan. Well, it's not toothless if your government adopts it because they're corrupt inside and takes it on as local domestic law. And they talk about the John Birch Society, but I don't see them talking about the Bar Association, which would be on the side of the author of this. They embrace Agenda 21. And so they're calling your attention to the very things that you're being destroyed by, and then they put them in a light that makes you want to kind of step back and say, well, maybe so, maybe not. Well, maybe they've got some reason why. And they're misstating the points. Now, I don't know, I don't remember all the 10. I don't remember if they're all there. Maybe some of them are kind of way out there. I don't know. I didn't really get into it. I just noticed that this came out at this time, and it's at a time when we need to understand that the paranoia is not in your blood, that if you do the study and you do the fact checks and you can prove it to yourself, that can't be in your blood then, because you went beyond paranoia to go educate yourself. And then, as I say, not just get the knowledge, but learn to properly apply what your knowledge told you that you need to respond to. It's kind of a multi-step process as well. That they set out all this information and they confuse you. And thank you for just strike me an email talking about giving me some websites to look at, and I just looked at the website and I just had to admit this would confuse me. The information on some websites is so much and so disparate that it would confuse me. My problem is I can read it and I can kind of cut through the holes real quick, so I take a lot of time quickly to kind of cut through it. I'm not really picking the information up anymore. I've learned how to cut through that it's either nonsense or it's not, or it's good in one part and it can't be used in another, as I was telling you to be careful of. And so my suggestion on that is I would be even confused by what I find on the internet. That's why I've suggested each one of you find a wrong that you know needs to be made right, because if you don't, it wins. These guys use it to take everybody down. If you believe that the paranoia, the concern you have is really, you think it's a paranoia that's in your blood that you can't overcome, you're done. That you can't let the internet invade you with all the information it has. If you focus on something, it's why I say I focus on some wrong that I want to make right, and then I research for that. And I still have information to cut through, because not always do we have good information. We have to still discern whether or not it's right. But my workload will go down if I do that. And what's interesting is I typically do not find those websites that are put out there that espouse all these grand knowledges of how the world is. And in doing so, really cause me to be, without any real good foundation, cause me to feel paranoid, cause me to feel that the world's bigger than I am, that there is this mass deception going on. The deception's in your mind, it seems to me, and there is no deception once you correct that. And once you correct that, you can become like lightning to most everybody else in your awareness about how to identify a real deception, how to identify those others that are imposing a paranoia that doesn't exist, that is just a cover shield for them advancing some wrong against us, or you, or someone you know. That I can't take anymore. I can't take the internet as a source for just any thought. You have to focus your subject matter that you're going to do. That's why I keep saying find a wrong. And I don't think I started to do this up until just recently, maybe within the year. That's what I started to realize. It's overwhelming to everybody, and it is. It's not a judgment. It just is. Find something, place to start that you are very interested in. That's the only protection you have as well, so that you're not convinced away from it. Find the thing that's wrong, something in you know is wrong and has to be made right, and then focus on studying about that. And I say, find people that you trust to respond to you if you have questions. As I've told you, in numerous years now, I ask you to trust me just enough that within a subject matter area that I've had to travel, that you're interested in, that if you find yourself on the trailhead of a trail, I'll place you on the trailhead of the subject matter that you're interested in if I've done it, and I'll put you in the right spot to start your studies, and then you're on your way. You use your passion to make the wrong right, the thing that's important to you, to drive you to learn what you need to learn. Not the dumb stuff, not the cloudy stuff, not the noise, but the real important stuff. That you go down that trail, you make that travel. We each have to take that trail. We can't rely on somebody else's work as well either. Even though we may come up to the same answer, we'll all see something different. I ask you to then come back, if you will. Tell me what you found. We'll work out our difference of what we saw. Maybe we saw different perspectives. Maybe I was looking at the top of a car and you were looking at the bottom. We have two different sights on the same item that we can build together. That I can put you on a path of study. I say, go down this path. I know you'll find this is the direction you want to go to find some things that was valuable to me. Look for your own, and let's maybe talk about it, is what I've suggested to everybody. That requires that you do something. It takes a time and a while to work that through. And when you're done, you are fortified against nonsense that I see coming out that wants to tell you that your paranoia is in your bloodstream, and we all have it. Probably said a whole lot more on that than I expected, but it's very important to be able to be your own mind and be your own study, and don't be overwhelmed or being talked out of your own interest, your own defenses, your own strategies, your own needs in the world against these others that will work for their future at your expense. Conspiracy theories. Oh, there's radiation everywhere. I haven't heard this. I'm just going to make this up that people think this is a conspiracy theory. What I've been telling you for a long time. Coming now out, improving. I've told you the radiation that Fukushima was blamed for. Well, Bethra stung Fukushima pretty bad here to prove that it's local to you in the reactor. We now have a government coming out to tell you better. Here, we're going to send you a little package. It's these iodine pills. If you didn't think that this is now coming to terms and the governments are having to keep track of this, East End given iodine pills as a nuclear disaster precaution. If you live in Durham region of Scarborough, you may have been mailed a package of pills in a calming sky blue box. Those pills are meant to protect you in the event of a nuclear disaster. A disaster that you living within a sensitive 10-kilometer zone surrounding the Pickering and Darlington nuclear generating stations would be on the front lines of, quote, a serious nuclear accident is extremely unlikely, says Ontario Power Generation spokesperson, Neil Kelly. But we worked with the Toronto Health and Durham Health, and we came up with a plan. 200,000 homes and businesses have just received potassium iodide, KI pills, in a $1.5 million OPG-funded project that is being run in conjunction with Durham Region and City of Toronto. Durham Region, that's Agenda 21, that's sustainable development right in your town, and the city in on it as well, I'm sure. Also known as RAD block, the pills prevent thyroid gland from absorbing radioactive iodine, thus reducing the risk of thyroid cancer in the aftermath of a nuclear disaster. Now, what can I tell you, folks? This has been going on up until now without your pills. And don't take those pills until you have a need for it, because you need to be able, as soon as you hear, you need to take them then if you're downwind. Don't take them before. They're not going to do you any good. Just put more iodine in your diet by maybe eating kelp. Just start increasing your iodine, natural iodine levels with things like kelp, sea kelp. You can't forget the salt. They barely put enough in there to do much more than maybe keep your goiter off. But we're talking serious stuff here. They're now admitting that you could be in a danger zone around these nuclear sources. First report out, folks. Something I've been telling you about. You need to be careful of. You need to watch what's going on, and not trying to tend to affect, influence your paranoia. That's why you want to know about your wind patterns in an area. Is to take a general view of what goes on throughout the year to find out what wind patterns you're in. It might be important one day. Conspiracy theories, folks. They keep talking about these conspiracy theories, and they try to take you out of your own knowledge. And that is one thing that you will get beyond. It's not a question once you know. Once you know something, you can't unsee the truth of it. And the more you know it, the more you know how it all works. So you end up having to do that, because as the challenger comes in the future, who is more sophisticated in his or her ability to persuade you, you have to have enough knowledge to be able to understand how to, I would say, deflect it. You don't necessarily want to take it on and fight it. I liken it to the principle of Aikido. You use their energy against them in a motion. It's almost like a dance. You work out how to dance with them in a way that you're not tripping on your face. And when you're done, they're gone. They're out there. They swung out. You swung them out into someplace else, or they're on their face. They're not in the dance no more. And you had a little bit of a good time with it. So we have these techniques. It's not something to be scared of. Don't be afeared of it. Find something that's wrong, make it right. Work to find out about these things. Be careful not to be persuaded away on tangential ideas. As I was saying, I guess in a response, we hear just as a less esoteric idea on these concepts. I hear lots of discussion. I've said it before. I'm going to say it quickly here again. I've heard lots of people talk about the birth certificate and spend innumerable hours on chewing up about the birth certificate or the Social Security number. Innumerable hours all about this number. And some of it is true, what they find. But you know what? Ultimately, at the end of the day, I've told you this before, that especially the birth certificate, that has never, ever, ever come up in anything I've done, ever. That it was anything. I mean, I was going to say that it was important. No, it never, ever, ever comes up. That even though it's interesting, yeah, it's gone banknote paper, yes, your mother informs on you, yes, it's a birth certificate, like a birth canal and all this stuff. Yeah, it's interesting, cool stuff to understand. Yes, it's registered somewhere. Yes, it's in vital statistics. Go look at what that's about. Yes, all that can be learned, and it's very interesting and very important to understand. Do you know what? In the end of the day, for these 30 years, Unless I found out that I didn't need it, I could just say, go bugger off. I don't need to tell you anything. Notwithstanding that there's a birth certificate in the world is hearsay to me, you find it. It's not relevant to anything I've ever done, ever. You can learn about it. I did some stuff. I learned about it. But I didn't waste a lot of time after I found out in running up on this that I needed to spend any time with it. So I guess that's the point. Be careful on what you focus on. I'm here to tell you, unless you have an example, markonthebeastyahoo.com, I guess it could pop up, where you are forced to your life to have to display some kind of birth certificate. That wasn't a benefit-driven thing. I mean, just to exist in the world. I'd maybe like to hear about it, but I'd like to know why you just didn't avoid it by saying, bugger off. That's hearsay to me. That it's irrelevant. So, okay, so we can learn about that, but it's not relevant. No, the Social Security number. If you know the law that says they can't ask it, and if the answer you give is that, well, I don't have to give it to you for that, then you admit that you have one, why don't you just say, I don't have one? It's irrelevant. I've never had the requirement to put that number anywhere or make one up. I mean, if I don't have one, I got a 999, I've been told. I don't even know what number to put down. I just leave it blank. Not applicable. How's that? That these things may be interesting to know, and there's laws about them that you can find out, but there's so much less involved to understand than just finding out that they're not relevant. And for the lateness in the war, the game, the race, however you want to talk of this thing is, for the lateness of this condition that we're in, we don't have time to waste on these things that are really not relevant. I've told you an easy way, one of the easy ways that you should be able to do pretty simply, about finding out that the name they use, all in caps, we can learn all about that. I've told you, I've got a definition. It's out of the law. It says that the letters designated in capitals, not merely, I mean, it's just not a corporation. It's a legal entity debtor. I guess it could be a corporation. I've got a legal rule for that. It's a bar association utility. So yes, I know what that's all about, but you know what? When they put that capitalized name on something, I've told you, why don't you go down to the Secretary of State of the charging state and write a letter and say, is this name in your files for doing business in the state? And they'll most likely, like they did me, send me a letter and said no. I turned around and put that in the court, said this entity was a fraudulent construction and it's not in this state. It's not me either. Why is that so hard that I've got to learn so much all the time? And all the time I'm doing this other study, I'm taking myself off the track of what will work. And then I went through all that about the name. Don't get yourself in places while you're studying that you need to use it. Hunker down a little bit. Give yourself some space to breathe while you're learning about this stuff. Don't give up your information, which is becoming more and more difficult. Windows 10 cannot be stopped from automatically spying on users, confirms Microsoft. Another conspiracy theory, folks? Another big data discussion I had with you a year and a half ago? That he said data in the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars. You can find the link at the end of the Blogcaster page. You can read it for yourself. They allow you to put yourself in their circuits by the benefit taking with all the trappings if you want. That data is important. And I said what they didn't say in this document was the big data. The big data is the commercial side, which may actually be more important. That Windows is going to spy on you, and they confirmed it now. There's a study. You can. I was going to read this stuff. I don't even want to read it. The titles tell us everything. If you want to know more, go to the Blogcaster and download the link and quickly get it. Type it in while you're listening to me. Go ahead and waste. I mean, you put your time over there. You're not listening, reading. You'll be reading on the internet on your search engine over this story instead of listening to me. But go ahead and do it if that's how you learn. You can go right now and get the proof of all this. They want you, the benefit they give you for free is the ability to keep you in the benefits and control. And so for those of us who are looking at this, I've said it before, and I made a change on one of my machines. I can't on this other one. I went over to Linux. I don't have to worry about them interrogating my machine. Do I know that it's not happening? Well, no, because I'm not that savvy on all this anymore, on these programming things. But I'm using Linux on one of my machines. I chose a very stable distribution, called Linux Lite. There's lots of others out there. I've looked at a whole lot of them. I'm intrigued by Unix because it's more security oriented. It's a double, triple wrapper and all that, but it's kind of too constricting for what I do right now and what I expose myself to. But that's a thought. But the Linux has a whole lot of stuff. I went to Linux Lite. I haven't had a problem. It's a little different, but I haven't had a problem. That this Windows 10 Microsoft Big Data, you're really going to have to start thinking about how this works. Yes, my Windows system I stopped updating now. I hide all the ones I can find that are going to keep this Windows 10. I don't have Windows 10. I'm going to try all I can not to have Windows 10, but at some point Windows 7 is not going to work no more. That, folks, you really have to take responsibility to do these things to protect yourself against identities and against benefits being given and tracking ability to be able to give yourself the, remember, as they track this information on where you go, they build this dossier that pigeonholes you. And you know they've come to a time they don't need anything. No reason, there's no probable cause. Forget that. It's long since gone. Unless you force that, and then you have what, the Bar Association to protect that? Are you kidding me? They don't even have to have reasonable suspicion. All they have to do is see if they take care of you. That's good enough. Not that you didn't ask. They don't care. They're going to take care of you. And they need this information. And you're going to cough it up one way or the other. But these people are not nice, and they agree that they have the right, though they never asked you. Though, periodically, the courts come out and say, well, these things that you're doing really aren't so cool. Why I say you have to engage where you can. I really don't know why it's so difficult for people to understand the legal system enough to be a stick in their eye on these little things, big subject matters, but little and easily prosecuted things. I've suggested for a long time people that get attacked by other people that are in government, that are attacked by you, that are really outside the law, why don't you go to small claims court? Those are pretty cheap to go run, unless you can do a waiver. Sue somebody. Rightfully now, you don't do it wrong. Win your case. You want to do your case only if you can win. Get used to identifying how to run these people around, because if you don't, there's no opposition. I see people doing this all the time in the counties. It's like a open wound. They keep going. Oh, the county commissioners, and this happens in our county. Oh, they violated us. I suggested to people, well, pursue this complaint. Go ahead and keep pushing the complaint. Find the channel to pursue it. Well, I don't know how much influence I have, but eventually they did do that, and they actually got a favorable condition from the state government over the county government's unlawful actions. And so they took that unlawfulness back to the county commissioners, the criminals, who aren't going to now recognize it, and so they whine about the fact they don't have a remedy. When people don't understand, it's pretty simple. Once the state declared by order that the acts were unlawful, you now can go to federal court on a civil rights violation, notwithstanding the definition of civil rights. Stick it in their face. Make them come to task, to answer. Just having to do that would be a pain. You'd think those people are going to stick around to get 3 or 4 or 5, 10 of these simple civil rights violation suits? It should be a slam dunk case when you got the state saying it was unlawful, and then you go talk before the council of commissioners, and they don't want to hear you now because you don't recognize that they're actually, that they think they're lawful. That's a violation. That's one of the biggest violations. They can't cut you out of your political process. That's the whole illusion. So I get a little bit frustrated when I see all this. We have logs we could be jamming into their eyes. Well, maybe not the brother one, but in the system and the gears. Big giant things would drive right into the gears. Grrr! And yet we don't use them. Right at our hand. It doesn't take hardly anything else to know about. That when somebody does, and there's still some things that come out. I'm not sure how this all works out. Sometimes you get some good judges, and a lot of times you don't. I don't want to throw it all again, the baby with the bathwater. Use the system that you can. That's what they call forum shopping. That's what that's for. But sorry, MPAA, court rejects your plan for a second SOPA at the ITC. All these, alphabet this and that and the other. SOPA was a Stop Online Privacy Act. This was to benefit the copyright holders. This is the Kim.com problem, and this is a big violation. I don't understand how it even got the wind in it, except for a bad judge, where Kim.com didn't even do business in the United States, had servers in Hong Kong, and did mega something or rather for file transfers. Apparently had a reasonable enough takedown policy, and MPAA went to the DOJ, more alphabets. The Hollywood industry went through MPAA's organization to the DOJ and used the DOJ as a mercenary to go attack Kim.com on things like this, over protecting their copyrights, which has been abused now. See, I think copyright, protecting the little guy, as I found out in patents for inventions, is very important, because the big corporations will destroy little inventors. In some regard, at that level, I have no problem with giving the little inventor at least, 17 years it's tough anyway, but to give him at least 17 years breathing room to try and develop his thing and getting it into the world the way he wants, to make a little bit of money. And a lot of these guys need it to continue, because it takes money to do this development. You just don't do it. And corporations don't have the problem. I told you about helping my friend in his patent at Ryobi. The big corporate, Sears as well, stole his patent, despite the law. He wasn't even given the time to have this idea and come into the world and benefit himself, his own energy, his own creation, benefit himself for a little while before it went public, which is that term of time. You have a certain privatization time. It's a statutory time of privateness. That's what the now copyright rules are being used in ways that would have never been thought of. Is what TPP is going to be coming in, all this. But at any rate, when it comes before the courts, these private agreements and these private uses of these laws aren't so lawful. Last year, when Sony emails leaked and it was revealed that MPAA was still totally focused on bringing SOPA back through alternative means, one of the strategies explored was getting the International Trade Commission, the ITC, to set up a sort of secret SOPA. The ITC is in an already problematic government agency. I'll get that spit out in a few moments, folks. Already problematic government agency that is already widely abused by patent holders. Basically, you can ask the ITC to, quote, block some sort of illegal foreign competition, and for a patent holder, this has meant going to the ITC and claiming that a foreign firm or a domestic firm that is importing products is violating its patents, and thus the ITC should issue an injunction blocking any such patents from entering the United States at its borders. This is I wanted to see, this is a procedural thing you get to do. And let me suggest another problem. The patent issue is important because foreign countries who are going to exploit you, not just local corporations, but foreign ones as foreign countries, will exploit this and bring in a defective idea in. And that's probably as much dangerous. In fact, I use copyrights to protect against that, not necessarily for the claim of the right, but to protect against the misuse of what it was. It's kind of like a contract deal, I've realized for myself. Copyrights are good to protect you against the misuse. And so there's lots involved in a lot of these things. But so anyway, there's a process you can go and you can keep people from bringing garbage that's under the color of your patent as well. And actually, it has different rules. But so even if the court might decide that a patent is invalid under existing rules, the ITC may have already started blocking the import of the products, claiming patent infringement. Boy, isn't that kind of what happened to Kim.com? He's not even coming in the country. That's how bad his case is. It basically allowed patent holders to get 2 bites at the apple. Well, the MPAA theory was that if the ITC can block infringing products at the border, why can't it basically do the same thing for infringing content? The goal of the strategy, which even the MPAA legal experts admitted was a long shot. Well, upshot of all this is private interpretation of law is not necessarily lawful, and that, like I said, the DOJ using the MPAA association, the industry association as a mercenary, using the DOJ, it was completely wrong. But when the court finally came in on the MPAA's interpretation, it comes off against the use of the law and the rules for that reason, and talks about it in the terms of jurisdiction. As I've told you over and over, it's about jurisdiction. And so the ITCC couldn't do what it was going to do and did, and so it was overthrown. So here's the point about things like TPP and TPIP. They're brought in as law, and then we suffer, because we can't throw it out so quickly, we suffer with this bad law, which in my mind is a complete overthrow of your rights to not be imposed or be associated with bad things. The government being allowed the presumption of lawful action has to be one of those things we have to tell that has to be put in law that can't be. We can't exist any longer on a presumption of lawfulness when we see so much evidence of crime under the color of law. These theft by extortions, these felony conversions. While this was going on, they were able to use this thing through a government agency to violate people. Where we have this claim of property extended to the corporations, that doesn't apparently extend to you, the one that they're parasitically feeding from. As this next report was pretty interesting. It's more along the same lines of big data, how they collect it, but more importantly, with regard to the fact that there's ways that the corporations are acting that are not lawful, then you also have a problem with them being able to use that to intrude on your rights. Why do they have the right of copyright and you don't? Where you see beware of ads that use inaudible sounds to link your phone, TV, and tablet and PC. They're transmitting ultrasonic sound through speakers now, through ads that they put on your smart devices that interlink what you do with those other devices. And no one asked you. That's, in my mind, struck me no different than the deputy sheriff asking me, that machine you have in the middle of the river, it looks like a dredge. And I said, well, if you're looking, and it has a 4-inch nozzle, and I said, if you're looking at that pipe thinking that unit has a 4-inch pipe right there, you don't know what you're talking about. And he said, well, bring it to shore and let me look at it. I said, I don't think I have to. Because if you think that's a 4-inch pipe, you don't know what you're looking at, first of all. Secondly, I don't have to bring it on and confess against myself, folks. I'm just giving you a list of what your rights are that you do at the point of the contact. And then I said, besides, how I do that with that machine allows me to be out there, and you notice no other miner is out in that river. Which means I must have the only secret on how to do that profitably, because that's the only way that I can get out there and use this law to protect me. And so to bring that forward and tell you how I do that would be giving you and the state a trade secret. So no, I'm not going to bring it in. That I don't see why your activity in your own room, how you do your interaction with your communication devices, what you use, how you go about your business, everybody's in a business apparently, isn't and shouldn't be a trade secret, on top of the fact that they have these machines now that now integrate themselves as ads that come through your smart devices that then seek out other applications to go around to look for other devices in order to tie up all those things in this big data mining fiasco in your life. Privacy advocates are warning federal authorities of a new threat, the use of inaudible high-frequency sounds to surreptitiously track a person's online behavior across a range of devices, including phones, TVs, tablets, and computers. I'm not going to read more. Again, I could read all this stuff. I'm not here to read to you. It's here. Big data is here. This is a big threat. On the one hand, corporate rights are powerful enough to keep this thing in play for themselves while they demolish your rights. If you want to take on a wrong, I can't see why this is not one of those wrongs that needs to stop. See, we're going into a future of electronics. We can't avoid that. That's how technology works. And technocracy was all over the top of that. We can't avoid this future. Well, I guess we might if we go into everything turns to glass because of nuclear war. I guess that we'll all be bombed in the Stone Age, and then we won't have to worry about it. So I hope you all have your survival skills for literally surviving in Mother Nature, because she don't care. She really don't. But inside our own devices that we accept and we take on, we are agreeing in their use. Windows is going to force itself on you. These companies force themselves upon you. They cry that they have copyrights to be able to do this, or free speech or whatever, and they deny the very rights to you that they are accepting. Because you are a farm animal. And crickets, you're not even that at that point. You're a cricket. You're an insect. You're that animal pest that you'll find yourself in Title VII in the United States Code. How's that one? These laws are made to be broken, apparently, if you can afford it. We have to bring an accountability that's beyond money in a system that is on debt. There's another thing that went through Twitter. There was some study that said that if you have no debt and $10 in your pocket, that you're wealthier than 25% of the Americans. And I wrote back and said, but $10 is evidence of debt. So our wealth is evidence of debt. Our wealth is in quotes. We have no wealth. If you have $10 today in your pocket and no debt, well, that's a false statement to begin with, but even if the condition could be had, you're still in debt. That's the wealth of this nation. As an American, you're in debt. And I hear crickets. If you have $10 of debt, folks, it says a note right on the top. Notes are evidence of debt. Evidence is a court. The court looks at this and takes judicial notice that you have evidence that you're a debtor. Debtors have no rights. If no one figured this stuff out pretty quickly, I'm going to say it again. I've said it before. If you have a $10 bill, they call it a bill, folks, don't they? A bill you owe, right? But what's the mentality in America that a tweet would go out from? This is supposed to be some intelligent, educated people. That a study came out that says that you're wealthy, more wealthy than 25% of the Americans if you have a $10 bill in your pocket and no debt. Then I'm shaking my head again. We're screwed up as a people, big time, folks. And these companies that are running this scam are taking advantage of that, where you keep bringing in and keep using the technology that ties you up and ties your ways up and interferes with your life, and they take credit and make a lot of money on it. I don't know, maybe I guess you'd want to have if you could be in on it. You did it with Google Ads. They're a multi-billion-dollar company now because of this other little fraud that they did. They're everywhere. Google, doing all kinds of stuff to make this condition worse. And we keep allowing it. And yet, the corporations make claims that they can't hold. And I suppose people could too, but everyone's reduced to a legal entity here, remember. Kind of like is not different than the United States. When you see is, you just might as well say is Israel, is U.S. Israel, is mercenary fighters. You just might as well say that. And so corporations are not coming out. You might as well we should have the presumption of care on the rest of the people that say, well, no, until you prove you're lawful, you can't claim lawfulness. As we find in even Australia, Australia revokes Myriad's 3 patent claims on isolated BRCA1 DNA. And this becomes super important with this DNA stealing that they're doing, DNA genetic modifications, who owns the patents on these things, and how this works. And decision issued October 7th, the High Court of Australia ruled unanimously that Darcy and Myriad Genetics, HCA 35, that 3 BRCA1 patent claims held by the Myriad Genetics under Australian patents were invalid. Now this is big because it kind of explains why you can't. This case finally comes out and says why you can't really patent. Same law for us. Patent these things. All 7 justices agreed to revoke Myriad's patent claims, one of 3, for specific isolated nucleic acids. The way they arrived at the conclusion varied, however, and there were 3 separate opinions. So we have separate opinions coming to the same form, which means you have 3 different trains of thought about how this thing was wrong, at least at a legalistic level. And the way I read that, I don't want to go through too much. I'm going to be running out of time here. They took, again, the legalistic approach. It wasn't so natural. It wasn't based in the nature of things. That you're not supposed to be able to patent these natural things. Then the question is, well, how much do we do before it's not natural that we can patent these things? Why? Because they mean a bottom line. They're a bottom buck about this. But when it came to the fact, all these claims of validity take all this time and expense to show that they aren't exclusive to those that claim it. Again, this is another style of a color of authority. And until it got challenged, it maintained maintained the enjoyment of a lawful existence in society to do whatever harm that it had done. One of the judges, the majority question was not whether the claim of invention prima facie was patentable, should be denied patentability, but by judicial fiat, but rather whether a claimed invention that fell outside the established concept of a manner of manufacture should nevertheless be included in the class of patentable inventions. And they were talking about the difference between manner of manufacture as a production. And so this is even a different thing that they did, and this is what causes me a little bit of concern. They avoided the natural existence. Why is that important? Because as they start learning and stealing your DNA, and they move to the bottom line, they start, as they're doing in California now, everybody's got to give up a little DNA down there, I think, as you get so-called born. These companies will get databases of that, and they'll be able to do something to it, and they'll claim you. They'll claim who you are. You won't even have possession of yourself. They'll modify you. They'll take us into the technocrat's future, where we will be genetically modified to be smaller and smaller because that reduces our carbon footprint. While those that are going to be the rulers, their genetics will be going bigger and bigger so that they become bigger than you as they deal with you in the future. Your little ones, not us. We're out of here. So I guess that's the other point. When are we going to step up to protect those in the future? They talk about future generations. It's kind of on us to give them, to leave that existence. And the people that are organized and infiltrating and surrounding, organized and have the plan, they're going to win the day if we don't step up. And it's that simple. It's not something I'm imposing. It's not a judgment I make on anybody. That's the fact. If you see wrongs that are not being righted, the wrongs will win the day. A criminal will not stop if he's not stopped. That takes somebody to do that. I really don't like this whole thing that way. But that's the reality, and at some point we have to be responsible to that reality. Maybe one day it'll be utopia, really utopia. Not right quite yet. And the psychopaths are about to get the asylum and chain all the rest of us up if we're not working really hard to work this out. And I know it's difficult. I know lots of people have lots going on. But each one of us has to take that on. There's no one to follow here. I can only hope you stand side by side with me, stand shoulder to shoulder, and I'll give you everything I think that I can find worked. I'm willing to give it out. I mean, this is what I've been doing. That's what we do behind the Woodshed. So I say it's beyond media here. I read the news, but it's not news to me. It's direction. It's intelligence. It's things that we need to know. Things how we have to approach it. Understanding what might be coming against us, so we can be prepared. We're not surprised. No surprises behind the Woodshed. You know what you came here for. At least we're told. That's why we asked to be here at this time, this interesting times we live in. And it really is kind of neat that way. So thank you for tuning in. As you can, donate to the servers, WT, worldtruth.org. Join up the social network. They pay for the servers, the broadcast, no commercials. RealLibertyMedia.com. Russ Grimner allows me the space on his website there to put the broadcast or more information so you can see it. And got UCY giving me a space, and FM broadcasters, AM broadcasters. If you have anybody else that wants to tell them. Maybe they can pick up the broadcast, and we can simulcast this whole thing as we do this every week as best as I can. MarkOnTheBeast@yahoo.com, and I do appreciate you tuning in. I hope you can take some of this information and start to use it. Take care.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the Woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
So that's what opening up up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.